Hi, everyone. It's Carol Williams with Williams Immigration. It is Monday morning. We are back for another edition of Beyond the Soundbite, where we talk about all things U.S. immigration. So today I want to dive in, and I'm really going to talk about two things primarily today. One is the H-1B cap season, because I know y'all are really tired of hearing me talk about H-1B cap season. And the second one is holiday travel tips and tricks. So the first thing I want to talk about with relationship to H-1B cap season is that if you are a citizen of Australia, you may qualify for what's called an E3 visa. An E3 visa is similar to an H-1B visa. So the position that you want to come to the US and work for, or that if you're an employer that you want to sponsor someone to come to the US and work for, that position must require a bachelor's degree at a minimum. The individual that you are hiring must have a bachelor's degree at a minimum in a related field for what you want them to do. So for instance, you want them to come be a software engineer, their degree needs to relate to software engineer. So if you want them to work as a software engineer, but they have an architecture degree, that's not going to work. But if they have a software engineering degree, then we are off to the races. So the great thing about this is that this allows Australian citizens to bypass the H-1B cap season and to bypass the H-1B lottery altogether. They can apply for E3s year-round. The other great thing about E3s is that they can apply for them. Your prospective employee can apply for them directly at the U.S. consulate overseas in Australia. So it avoids USCIS. It's much more efficient. Now there is a certain number that can be approved every year, and that is 10,500 for every fiscal year. Usually that number, we have extras. So, if that is something that you are interested in, if you're an employer, you're interested in hiring someone that is from Australia, you don't so much have to worry about the H-1B cap. So if that is at all of interest to you, feel free to give our office a call. We're happy to help you with that and walk you through that process. The second thing I want to talk about this morning with relationship to the H-1B cap is that the USCIS has just sent out notices with respect to the fiscal year 2024 cap season. That's the cap season where the lottery was run last year, or I should say this year. Look at me, I'm already ahead into January. It was run in March of this year. And that cap season is now officially over. So if you go back in and you check your My USCIS account, you should now see that your status has officially changed to not selected. I woke up this morning to a notice in my USCIS account. So I went in and I checked all of my cap subject cases that were not selected thus far in either of the two lottery runnings this year. And indeed, their status is now saying not selected. So we have now seen an end to the fiscal year 2024 H-1B cap season. So what that means is if you were not selected, that means you're not going to be selected for this current cap season. You need to start thinking about your plan B if you haven't already done so and really start implementing that. USCIS has enough applications that they have now reached the mandated 65,000 for the regular cap, those folks that have bachelor's degrees, and the 20,000 master's cap, and that's for folks that have masters. So again, fiscal year 2024 is officially over, but fiscal year 2025 is about to start ramping up for that cap season. So you guys only get maybe a couple of months break from me talking about H-1B cap season all calendar year. So January is typically when some of my larger clients and some of my smaller clients too, but typically some of my larger clients will start looking at who in their candidate pool do they want to make offers to that will be contingent upon them getting an H-1B, what current employees that are currently in F1 status and they're currently working on their OPT, which one of those employees are they going to sponsor for H-1B? This is typically the time of year when employers start looking at their employees and their prospective employees and figuring out who they want to sponsor for their H-1B. We cannot even enter until March. We cannot enter the lottery until March, but January is when I find that a lot of my larger clients are looking at their non-immigrant population of current employees and folks that they are going to issue offers to at the beginning of the year. So as we kind of close out fiscal year 2024 cap season, we start ramping up for fiscal year 2025. And I'm always here for all things H-1B. So we will be talking about this throughout the year. The next thing I want to talk to y'all about are really just some holiday travel reminders, things I see in my practice during really peak holiday travel times, and some things that I tend to see catch people off guard and get them caught last minute, and sometimes even prevent them from traveling during the holiday season. So don't let this be you. First things first, CBP, as I have said on several of our Monday morning lives together, they now have a stampless entry program. So they're no longer issuing a hard white I-94 card that you put on your passport that they stamp. All of that is done electronically. So my tip for you is when you are traveling, when you re-enter the United States, whether that be at the end of December, whether that be at the beginning or somewhere in January or February, depending on how long your break will be, make sure that one of the first things you do is go online and check your I-94 card status. You want to make sure that your name is spelled correctly. You want to make sure that your passport is entered correctly. You want to make sure that they have entered you in the proper status that corresponds with the visa in your passport, if you need to have a visa in your passport. If you don't need to have a visa in your passport and you are visa exempt, make sure again that you are entered in the correct status. You do not want to be 6 months out and ready to travel again, or we're ready to do an extension or something, and we realize that, oops, you were admitted as a visitor, or you were accidentally admitted in the wrong work authorized status. So while those issues are fairly typical, sometimes they happen. We're human, we make mistakes. It is easier to fix them the sooner we catch them. So you always want to make sure that you're checking your I-94 card when you re-enter the US every single time. Do not skip a time, because that'll be the time that you're accidentally entered as a visitor. And I've seen it happen, and it needs to be fixed, and it is sort of anxiety inducing. Now that said, you get you enter, you check your I-94 card. You're like, Carol, my I-94 card, I got it. It's good. I'm entered in the right status, but I thought I had another year on my visa or on my approval notice, and they have cut my time short for the time by which I have to leave. The first thing you need to check when that happens is, what is the expiration date on your passport? CBP will stamp you in to coincide with the expiration date of your passport if your passport expires before your approval notice or your visa. So again, super important to check that if you think your time has been cut short. If you are traveling with your family, or frankly, even if you're not traveling with your family, you want to make sure that you are checking your expiration dates of your passports, because all too often I see family members that have applied for passports at different times because of different eligibility, especially if there are children involved. And all of your passports don't always expire as a family on the same day. So you want to make sure that you are looking at your I-94 card, looking at the expiration date of your passport. And if your time is cut short because of your passport, that's a signal to you that you need to drop a note in your calendar that you're going to have to renew your passport. So keep that in mind as well. I have definitely had instances where one or two members of the family who maybe don't travel as much just forgot that their passport expired. And so that made holiday travel a little bit more challenging. The other thing, so number 3 on my list of holiday travel tips, is make sure before you leave for the airport, preferably when you're making your ticket, but definitely before you head to the airport, make sure that your passport and your visa are still valid. I get calls all the time from people that call me and they say, oh my God, what do I do? I didn't realize that my passport quite literally expires tomorrow and my flight is supposed to be in 3 days. That's difficult. Sometimes people miss flights, right? Sometimes people miss entire vacations because they didn't check the expiration date of their passport and their visa. So you want to make sure that you calendar these dates and make sure that you are giving yourself enough time that your passport can be extended. So if you are traveling this holiday season, may I recommend that you, of course, after you stop listening to this lovely broadcast this morning, check your passport and your visa expiration dates. Tip number 4, if you need a visa to get into the country in which you are going, so let's say you're not going home, right? Let's say you're going to a third country that is not the US, that is not your home country. Do you need a visa for that country? What is the process to get a visa for that country? Make sure that if you need the visa ahead of time before getting on the plane to even go to that country, make sure that you have gone through that process. If you can apply for the visa upon arrival in the country, in the airport, there are many countries where you can do that. Make sure that you understand what currency will be accepted. Will they accept the US dollar? Will they accept the British pound? Will they accept the euro? Well, what currency will they accept? And will they give you change? I have traveled to countries where they didn't give change. So just keep that in mind. Make sure that you look up these things before you get on the plane. There is nothing worse than having to get your currency exchanged for the local currency or for USD, for for the US dollar, than to go pay for your visa. So just make sure that you have, all the proper currency. Make sure that, if it needs to be exact currency, make sure you have that for you and all of your family members that are traveling. If you need to have documents, if you need to have a birth certificate with you, if you need to have a marriage certificate with you, make sure that you look that up and that you have all of those documents with you. Um, Number 5, double check that you have all of your travel documents with you. Don't accidentally put them in your checked luggage as you're packing. I know that sounds real basic and real crazy, but it happens. So make sure that I always make sure that when I'm traveling, whether domestic or internationally, that I have a designated spot in my carry-on that is only for my travel documents. And that is just muscle memory. I go to that spot, I get my license out, I get my passport out, whatever document I need. It's there in that one spot, and it is never in my checked luggage. The last holiday travel tip that I have for you is make sure that you have copies of all of your travel documents. So your visa, all pages of your passport, even if they are blank, a separate copy of the biometric page of your passport, a separate copy of your visa, um, a copy of your last I-94 card. Make sure you have copies of all of these documents, and also your birth certificate, your marriage certificate, any document that you may have to show as you're entering another country or coming back to the US. Make sure that you have all of those documents saved somewhere electronically. Heaven forbid you are pickpocketed, or your luggage is lost, or you lose your passport, you lose these documents, you lose the physical pieces of paper. You want to help the government officials help you. It is much easier for them to work off of a copy of your documents in order to get you, temporary travel permission to return either back to your home country or back to the US. If they can start with copies. If they have to start with nothing, it's going to be harder for them and it's going to take them much longer. So that already sort of adds to all the anxiety in that situation anyway. So make sure that you have stored electronically copies of your travel documents, and make sure that you have either a trusted advisor, a family member, a friend that also has access to these documents, so that if you are in a location that maybe doesn't have really good Wi-Fi or internet access, that you can call someone, and they can perhaps fax a copy of these documents to you. Sometimes sometimes we have to get old school. Okay. Um, so just make sure that all of your documents are backed up somewhere electronically, just in case, heaven forbid, they are lost or stolen and you have to replace them and you have to show who you are, and show, improve up your identity. So that is all I have for you this Monday morning. Have a wonderful rest of your day. If you have any questions about what travel documents you need and how you should be handling them, the closeout of this current CAP season, fiscal year 2024, or the new CAP season, fiscal year 2025, feel free to reach out to our office. We're happy to have a chat with you during a consultation. But truly have a wonderful rest of your Monday, a great rest of your week, and a wonderful holiday season. And I will chat with you later.